I'll do an intro with my wavy arms and a recap, and then I'll introduce Boris Becker and the beast from the pit. Hello and welcome to part 3 of season 11. I am Paul or P-Bal. That's very exciting. Now I've remembered early doors here. Like and subscribe. There's that little notification thing. Like us, subscribe to us, share us. Before I introduce the other two Marys, previously on season 11, we scored in reverse order. The Monster of Paladin got 14 points. Sad times. Time Warrior on 22, Invasion of the Dinosaurs on 24, and our current leader is Death to the Daleks on 26. But that could all change. We have one more story to get through today. I'm joined by...
Hello, it's James.
And hello, it's Jason.
Are you sure, Jason?
I am sure. It's been a very long day.
Jason's been on the co-op orange with all the additives, I think.
I've had too much caffeine today, that's for sure.
Well, let us hope that the caffeine will guide us as we look at the planet of the spiders. That was my mid-peril face, that was. Anyway, sod you. Everyone's a critic. Who's going to introduce this one?
Oh, go on, Jason.
No. I think the man with a stone on his head needs to introduce this one.
It does look a bit like, you know, when you get the packaging, the nuggets in the packaging.
Yeah.
It looks like a packaging nugget. That's why I was thrown initially, I think.
No, it's an actual stone. However, it might just fall out at any moment and hit me on the nose. So who knows? You might be lucky to get it while I'm talking. So, Planet of the Spiders. It is the grand finale for Mr. Pertwee. Very sad, and that flipping crystal is back, which has cropped up a number of times, and we're back to Metabilis 3. In this sort of 6-part epic, which kind of has everything in the kitchen sink thrown at it, you know, in honor of Mr. Pertwee. And in particular, you've got people that he particularly likes that come back. He's got friends that join the cast. He's got a huge, and we'll probably talk about this a bit later on, huge chase sequence through air, land, and water as well. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this 6-parter, not to mention a load of old spiders as well.
Oh, them old 8 legs, eh?
I like the way you've avoided giving us a premise, a précis of the story here. Would Jason like to say what the story is about?
Well, you know, we've got 8 legs here, and there's big giant spiders.
It's in the title, Planet of the Spiders. That is not the story.
I know, this is really good. It's
really surprising when the Daleks turn up.
I'm going to start by agreeing with James. This is a really sad story when you rewatch back on it, because it really is the end of an era here as we're heading up towards the end of Jon's tenure as the Doctor. And what's really nice, actually, I think, is that story starts off well. We get a little bit of Mike Yates action. We thought Mike Yates was gone for the start of, or for the end of Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Yet here he comes. He's been off meditating in an old monastery somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And there's shenanigans going on down in the cellar. So it sets a premise up for quite a good story. Now, you know what? I think this would have been a fantastic 4-part story. But then Jon wouldn't have got his massive air, sea, land, trains, planes and automobiles sort of journey and chase through the whole of one episode, is fair to say, I think. But you know, it's a delightful little end to his era. The story that I single-handedly put down to giving me a real fear of spiders as I've grown up and gone through adult life.
So So a good setup for a Doctor Who story, just to take what you've said there, Jason, is some hot Mike Yates action and something happening in a cellar. I mean, I don't know if that's a Doctor Who premise.
Well, it's the start of a story.
It is the start of a story because both of those things are in part one of this story, which is the first part of the story.
You wanted me to break it down part by part.
Go on then. Let's hear it then, Jason. Part by part. What's the story about?
No, I'm not going there. That would spoil it for our viewer.
Because you would watch this before you actually watched Planet of the Spiders, wouldn't you? I think there's some haze on what this is all about. Because to be brutally frank, I think the storyline throughout this story is fairly hazy. It doesn't really hang as a thing, does it?
It's all about the crystal, though, isn't it? He nicked the crystal, like in the previous season, and now the spiders want the crystal back because the great one, the big spider, wants to put the crystal above her head, and then she thinks she's going to get powers over everything. So
why is Cyril Sharp psychic then?
So that makes for a nice little bit of business at the beginning of the episode, doesn't it?
Jason's little bit of business here is just like, it doesn't make sense, but it makes for a little bit of business. Have you been in on Russ's storylining now? He's like, Russ, dear, it doesn't matter. It's a lovely little bit of business. Because Cyril Sharp has discovered that he's actually psychic. So TV's Doctor Who's gone to watch this thing because he knows he's now finding his actual psychic powers. But it's only when he holds the crystal that it kills him because the crystals, he's doing psychometry and this crystal's too strong for him. So Cyril Sharp's being a psychic is a storyline that's got nothing to do with anything else.
No, so it was just the Doctor investigating. The Doctor and the Brigadier went along to watch the show.
But he was not a real psychic, and then he became a real psychic.
No,
that was the storyline.
Yeah, but then he was pretending not to be a good psychic.
Yeah, but I know. But the point is, what made him into being a good psychic? That's just not something we're bothered with.
It's nothing to do with the rest of the plot. It's just a plot device so that they could get to the spiders.
But even that doesn't really. Okay, I feel that wasn't a particularly well thought. I think if you just don't think about it, that's probably a lovely bit of business. But it doesn't follow through.
Where people say that they think Ronnie Corbett sat in the audience, isn't it? That this guy over here, people say looks a bit like Ronnie Corbett at the beginning. I mean, the Brigadier is obviously so enthusiastic about this psychic show.
But he loves it when there's a bit of stripping, doesn't he? Oh, we're gonna have to cancel the break now because then you get this. You get your first mention of Doris, don't you? As well. I mean, that's
yes.
But that psychic thing at the start makes no sense. That does not have any links to this. I'm putting that out there now. Put it in the comments below if you can find a way that this would make some kind of sense.
Yeah, because Jo just so happens to send back the crystal.
Jo's confirming that Professor Clifford has taken her up the Amazon, hasn't she?
That is correct. And it's not doing them any good having that Metabolus 3 crystal, is it?
So she sent it back just in time for the clairvoyant, for the psychic, who happens to be nothing to do with the rest of the story, but ends up saying, oh yeah, there is something about this crystal, and then dies.
Can buy us some Drashig footage because Barry likes the Drashigs.
Yeah, he wanted the Drashigs back for a little cameo.
Yeah, I mean, she must use an amazing postal service because, to be brutally frank, if it was anything like the stuff we use, for 3 months down the line, you'd have a sort of battered package would come back that had gone around somewhere else. I'm not keen because I just don't think it feels so bitty. Because whenever this sort of feels like they want to do something, it's just like, oh, let's have a car chase. I don't think Planet of the Spiders at 6 parts, I don't think it even hangs together well. The spiders also, they want to take over the universe, and they also want to invade the Earth as well. I mean, it's all part of this, the general scheme of things, with thanks to the crystal.
But the Great One wants the crystal back.
Great One wants the crystal back to expand her mind because she thinks it'll expand exponentially and she'll become exponentially clever, rather than not having enough space for the brain expansion and just dying.
Whereas the Queen wants to take over because there's lots of bickering, isn't there, between the bitchy spiders, and they are literally like bitchy old queens.
It's like the snug at the Rover's Return. They're in a rattlesnipe in there, aren't they?
But then you kind of, I'm not going to go out there and just to be unkind. But when you see what's living on Metabilis 3, the insipid human people that are lingering there, I kind of like, if I was a spider, I'd be a bit of a bitch and want to take over the universe.
I don't get when they in Green Death, where he goes to Metabilis 3, there's like a giant bird that attacks him. There's like this squid thing. There's all these horrible creatures.
It's a funny color as well.
Yeah, it's a really weird color. They go to Metabilis 3. They come across a bunch of primitives, if you like, and these spiders. None of the other things that have been there in that previous episode. There doesn't seem to be any of that peril.
But the colony, the colony has landed there. It's a future Earth colony that has landed on Metabilis 3. A small spider, of which they do not like to be identified as spiders, has mutated thanks to the powers of the crystals and the thingy, which has made them into the ruling race. We've got sheep off screen. We don't see the sheep they're referred to. So as far as we know from Earth, all they took were slightly disinterested actors, sheep and spiders.
But can you imagine the size of the sheep? I mean, if the spiders have managed to sort of grow to that size. I
don't think the sheep haven't mutated. They're just on the field. They're just on that. They're happy on the green part, which again, because the bits we see in Metabilis 3 are either the blue crystal cave or the sandy bit. I don't know what the sheep are grazing on.
This massive sheep that just happens to come across one of these crystals that's in the background.
And they're not wearing woolen gear. You thought if they were living off the sheep, they'd be all in home knitted.
They're feeding the sheep to the spiders, aren't they?
That is exactly what must be happening, especially looking at the size of that great one.
Oh yeah, they say that they do eat the sheep. Everyone's eating sheep. Mutton is a right hoot on Metabilis 3, but they'll eat a human if they fancy it. But then, if there are still big bird creatures and snakes and all that stuff at some other part of the world, you thought they'd have been diversifying on the food chain. Yeah,
it looks like they ran out of money by the time they got to the Metabilis 3
because they spent
planet
it all
landscape thing there with all that CSO for the eye to see. I mean, it doesn't work, does it? Particularly when you're in the Great Cave with the big one.
The great one.
The great one. The big one was just next door. This was the great one.
All I know is that single visual image, I am convinced to this day, is what gave me arachnophobia.
Really? And but you were about 30 when this went out. I mean,
I was not 30. I was 4.
34.
4. This is we've arrived at my very first memory of watching Doctor Who here. We've arrived at it.
I remember a conversation 30 minutes ago. I mean,
seriously, we've arrived at it. Episode 3 of Planet of the Spiders.
So is your first memory or two like Jenny Laird? Is that what you're telling us? Well, my son, my husband, and oh my, you would not believe that Jenny Laird, the RADA Award, and had such a long career. I mean, she was a headlining actress for actual films. She was a headlining film star. And she is worse than the set. It's like she doesn't know what the day is. It's like Jason at the start of one of these recordings. It's just confusion, strangeness, and you wonder whether they're really meant to be there.
What story are we recording?
But my husband, and she stumbles over the lines. She's like Irene Handel in Maggie and Her. She is. Maggie and Her is another terror. If you haven't seen it, don't check it out. It's yeah, and I mean, you get Gareth Hunt, pre-New Avengers, pre-Coffee Beans.
Lovely moustache.
He has. He's got a handlebar moustache, isn't
Proper old mo going on there.
But Joanna and Roe was a hoot when she came to the Phantom signing. She even put up with Jason. You remember that, Jason?
I do. Yes, I do.
I mean,
he was sat at the table going, "Who's coming to this one?"
Oh, well, I don't know if you heard of this one. My first memory is Planet of the Spiders. Have you seen that one? I'm in it. Oh, but it's my first memory.
But it is genuinely my first memory.
Oh, dear.
It wasn't like one of those preemptive things where you visualize it in the future. You're like, one day Doctor Who will have spiders in it.
You still believe I saw the pilot. You still believe I watched the pilot, don't you, being recorded?
I'm slightly fearful you were in the pilot. You might have been the stunt double for Eileen Way.
I was the caveman that walked up to the TARDIS set in shadow.
They recast you for the second week because it was too fey a shadow.
Looked like a teapot.
Don't.
I mean, I'm not going to sink things any lower, but Ralph Arliss on the Meta list is probably one of the hottest things to grace Doctor Who. Doesn't get a lot to say, but he looks lovely doing it.
You don't really, but do you want him to say a lot? Because he is very easy on the eye.
He's also it's easy. Is he part of Greenpeace? No, he's actual. He went into politics, dear viewer. That's what I'm going to say. I mean, because that's now on the internet. That's now true.
That's not a dark web alert, is it?
It's not from me. It's not a fact from me.
Oh, misinformation. Mr. Musk will put an end to that. We shall see. Before we get to the Metabulus thing, I mean, I think it's nice that we have the bit with Sarah and Mike. That's quite a nice sort of setup. But again, it does feel slightly, to an extent, that we've not got a lot of Sarah and Doctor Who. Although she does have the crowning part 6. He's dead. He's dead, dear. He's dead. Squish, squish. He's dead. He's not dead. Oh, he's dying. Squish, squish. No, he's back. It's like all that sort of monster of Paladin. Oh, he's dead. It's sort of finally paid off.
Doesn't she think he's died as well in episode 4?
Yeah, I think episode 3 ends with him being zapped, and then she thinks he's dead at that point. And then
she has to get the old bag out the TARDIS, doesn't she, to save him?
Yeah,
that's it.
That's
it. It is very clear. John clearly. I think we talked about this in Monster of Peladon. His back was quite bad, and you can just tell pretty much any time he has to fall over in this story, it's a stunt double, isn't it? Now
he's replaced. I think it is nice that we get the sort of final, because this is Mike Yates's final appearance as a main character. I know he crops up in, as a little cameo in 5 Doctors, for example, but this is the last story that officially has Mike Yates, and he's now transitioned out of UNIT, hasn't he? We've seen that. We've seen that sort of falling out from the Green Death, and we saw it in the dinosaurs, and now he has left, but he's still quite traumatized by everything that's happened, which is why he's at this retreat. So it's quite nice to have him back to show that there is life for him outside of UNIT, because we'll see the rest of the UNIT guys crop up a bit more with Tom before they're kind of phased out. So I think that's nice I know you said you didn't particularly like when we talked about the dinosaurs, you didn't particularly like his fall from grace, if you like, because he he kind of turned against the Doctor. But I think it's good that you see a little bit of redemption at the end. He's out of unit and he's doing okay, even though he's attacked by a whole load of people with spiders on the back. But he's still trying to fight the good fight, if you like.
I think he's given the ending that I think probably the character deserves. I mean, he was part of the unit family for the years through Jon Pertwee years, and I wasn't happy, I don't think, in the way that he was written out at the end of Invasion of the Dinosaurs, because it felt like an act of betrayal. So yeah, I was glad that the scriptwriters gave him that sort of little bit of a redemption arc, like you said, James. I think it works.
Is it a good redemption arc? Because he doesn't really come back into TV's Doctor Who doesn't say, "Thank you, Mike. You've worked this out for me and helped me." He just sort of gets shot and then sort of. Do you know what I mean? There isn't a kind of endy bit where you if it was an American thing, they'd all hug with him. But the Brigadier didn't say, "Thanks, Mike. I couldn't have done this without you." Whatever. I mean, he doesn't. I don't know entirely what he does throughout it. He just sort of calls Sarah Jane up to say, I think something's amiss here. Can you come and look into it? Because I don't want to phone the Brigadier because it's awkward. It's been a few months and, he's moved on. I kind of, there's just a sort of, I don't know whether, I like the notion of him coming back into it and having this kind of, look, I am a good guy, I'm doing a good thing. I've gone to a spiritualist retreat where there's a gang of 5 people trying to get spiders to invade the world. Because that's the sort of person that hangs out at a spiritualist retreat. They're all kind of thinking, I want to cleanse my soul, but also take over the universe. And he sort of does this kind of, I don't know if he quite gets maybe he needed to be with Sarah and Doctor when they went to Metabolus or something.
Yeah. And not forgetting, we've got another Time Lord at the retreat. So we've got, is it Kanpo?
Choji?
Campo?
Campo sounds like Jason's nickname.
Who turns out to be the Doctor's infamous sort of, hermit on the hillside from his tales of Gallifrey.
Yeah, he pre-shadows the sort of the Watcher thing, doesn't he? I suppose it's a nice sort of thing that Time Lords send.
It's there to help remind the viewer that regeneration is coming. So we'll just remind you by having 2 regenerations. We'll have 1 regeneration to start with, and then we'll get round to the Doctor's regeneration. And it's the first time regeneration's called regeneration.
Yes, it is. It's the first time it's actually termed regeneration. And it was filmed in the same studio. So you had Tom lying on the floor, you had John lying on the floor, and they filmed the sequences live.
It's quite a bland regeneration, isn't it? In the grand scheme of what was to follow it.
Yeah, we're not. I mean, the history of regeneration is quite mixed, isn't it?
Hang on. How is it bland compared to Tom swinging from a cable and the 3 of them sort of gathering round him? How's it bland?
Well, didn't he have a little bit of flashing by going on as well with people going by talking to him?
The montage.
Yes.
But is that more dramatic then? Because it's quite beautiful, isn't it? Because John leans out the TARDIS, it's like, the TARDIS brought me home kind of thing, doesn't he? I lost my way, the TARDIS brought me back. It's quite a sweet thing that he knew he needed TV Sarah Jane Smith and the Brigadier. I think that's quite underplayed. And
we don't have the floating heads that you get with.
No.
But that's so continuity thing, isn't it? That's why this is the thing we sort of talked about with the 80s, isn't it? Where instead of just regenerating and then we're on with the next story, it's kind of this thing of, we're talking about regeneration and regeneration means this, and previously regeneration has meant this, and let's have 8,000 flashbacks and the regeneration means just have a bloody story.
I don't think that the bits where the TARDIS lands and he falls out and falls on the floor and there's that, I don't think that's bland. I just think that the regeneration sequence itself, where it just fades into Tom Baker, is the bit that I think could have just had an electric effect or some kind of an effect around it.
And it's the first end of season regeneration because Pat Troughton regenerated where it was partway through the season, wasn't it? No. William Hartnell. Oh, yeah, because you had the end of the last series. forced him, didn't they? They had the trial, and then they sent him back. But you didn't see the new face because Jon wasn't ready to film, so you just saw him at the beginning of the next one stagger out the TARDIS. Whereas the Hartnell Troughton one was not at the end of the season, was it?
He's regenerating when his face starts spinning around at the end of the War Games, isn't he? I mean,
Yeah.
If you want to negate 6,000 audio spin-offs set in the gap, I mean, he is meant to be regenerated. That is what they're saying. It's supposed to be
his regeneration, yeah. You never got the change into Pertwee because he wasn't. Well, when they filmed that sequence, he wasn't signed off yet. And
he didn't like the shot, did he, Mr. Pertwee? He didn't like the up the conch shot, did he? For want of a. I read an amazing story, and it's not from this story, but it's from a season or so back on this, of Jon. Apparently, when he got to rehearsals, I hope this is true because it's so terrible. I hope this is true, that he would go through the script and any page which hadn't got the Doctor in, he'd tear out. And if there were too many pages tear out, he'd go, the light script this week, and throw it. I hope that's true. I do, just because I love that.
James, have you uncovered that fact in your little scroll around the dark web?
I heard something along those lines that he did have a habit of just taking out like pages that weren't his.
But then he wouldn't learn it, and he'd have to write it down on the set, wouldn't he? So what was he playing at?
There are other actors that do similar things when they're rehearsing, is they just take out the bits that aren't them, because it's like, I only want to learn my lines until someone's going.
I think it was more of a, I'm the star of this show. I want more weight on my script than I don't need to learn what's happening at HQ this week.
Well, let's face it, though, he does get an awful lot of screen time in this story, so this wasn't particularly light script for him, was it? Particularly when we had that chase sequence all the way through that episode.
I mean, the chase sequence, I mean, they go full throttle, don't they? I mean, you've got Bessie and you've got the Who-mobile involved in that chase sequence. Then you get, because he likes hovercrafts, you get the hovercraft and you get the speedboat, you've got the helicopter. It is like a Pertwee greatest hits of chases from his time as the Doctor, sort of put into this long sequence. And I personally quite like it. It's like, oh, this is quite nice. Bit of a refreshing change from a whole load of people in a monastery, not in a monastery, in a retreat. But it's, you get to the very end and it's a bit sort of like, and what was the point? Because the spider zaps him away.
And that's just exactly it. What was the point? There wasn't a point to it in the end, was there?
The point was to because it was something that Jon wanted to do, and there's and I think if we're being honest, when you talk about how things don't fit together, it's probably because they've gone, Jon, what do you want to do with this scene? So I would like to have a chase, please. Okay, so what kind of chase? Well, I'd like to use every vehicle we've ever shown.
It's quite a bit of business. It's just a little bit of business.
Okay,
but it is a good bit of business, though. It's a whole.
It goes on forever. It just goes on forever. What? Oh, and the other weird thing that's sort of like on this sort of, because this story does go on forever. This really weird. I think is it parts 4 and 5 both have this weird thing where the cliffhanger just seems to come a couple of lines into a scene or something. It's kind of like it's not like a peril, like, because there's that one where Doctor Who walks in and Sarah Jane goes, "Oh, Doctor," and then the music rolls. It's like, you have been watching in order of appearance, Jon Pertwee.
The fifth the last cliffhanger, and then the part 6 start with different scenes because they cut the scenes, and then they were like, oh, because they were running over on part 5, and they didn't like the technical effects, but then put it into the recap in part 6, even though it hadn't happened. So you get this recap of a scene that actually you hadn't seen before because it was running short for the final part because they didn't have any chase left.
But the weird thing with the final part as well is that you have that, you've set up the Metabilis thing that they've had a revolution in the episode before, and it's like they're going to overpower because they've all got, you know, we have like a stone stuck to your head or whatever people do.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it works. They're going to have a revolution and they could take, and then the next part, they go back to like, oh, the revolution failed because they're all stupid. That's literally what the spiders say, we're all stupid. Yeah. They are bitchy spiders. But you don't kind of get the resolution after it because the great one dies, and then there's the thing that like, then they're all from the West Country, aren't they? In Metabilis 3, aren't they? They're all like that. Them great ones. Well, we be doing over the great ones. They'll be dead, but they don't sort of show what's happened.
No.
So I don't know whether it feels like there should be a scene where you know, Gareth Hunt gives Jon Pertwee a bit of Nescafe and settles him down, and they help him back to the TARDIS, and then he goes. Or there should be some sort of payoff to say, actually, this is the sort of what's happened here, because that feels like a slightly unresolved story. Because you don't necessarily work out what happens with my husband, your father, because they're going to eat him, then they save him, but then they're overpowered. So have they then eaten him anyway?
Don't know.
These are going to become some of life's unanswered questions for us, aren't they? This
was broadcast in 1974. These are questions that haven't been answered in 40 years, Jason. No, they're not becoming anything.
Has there not been a Big Finish spin-off return to Metabilis 3? I'm sure there must have been a story where they went back.
Sure there has been, and I'm sure it is glorious.
It's probably got, you know, Lady Christina and River Song in it or something. Someone.
And Joe Martin.
Oh, well, yeah.
Fourth Doctor, before he was even regenerated. The fugitive of Metabilis 3. I could see it. That's why the Grey One was so pissed off, because the fugitive Doctor had already been there. They write themselves, don't they?
Do. We're missing a trick.
I mean, what the thing I was thinking about this the other day is that because Jason said this was his first memory. I first saw Doctor Who and the Planet of Spiders when it was the 30th anniversary weekend on UK Gold, and they did the Regeneration episodes, but only the Regeneration episodes. So you had part 3 of the 10th Planet because they hadn't got part 4, part 10 of the War Games, and then 6, and yeah. So I saw part 6 of the Planet of the Spiders before I saw the rest of it. And it's one of those, it's a bit like the Pertwee years. It's one of the things that actually, in some ways, you probably don't need to see what's gone in the 5 episodes before to understand what's going on with it. And so I never bought it on video because it was £20. It was, I mean, this is heady times, kids. Yeah. It was £20 for 2 cassette tapes. And I wasn't going to invest £20 for 5 episodes when, you know, you can pay 11 quid and have 4 that you've not seen before. So it was quite some time before I saw the whole of the Planet of Spiders, and I wasn't impressed then. And I was like, I'm glad that little Bal, with his savvy-saving brain, didn't invest in this, because he'd have been very disappointed.
And also, it didn't give you a fear of spiders either.
No, I've met creepier things.
It scarred Jason for life.
And yet he's always doing the spider impression, isn't he? When someone's, oh no, that's okay. We'll step aside from that.
Step aside.
That's not a great one, I can tell you. Do we have any exciting facts on Doctor Who and the Planet of the Spiders?
So, a bit like Jason, Liz Sladen was actually arachnophobic. So this was a horrendous story for her because she had a fear of spiders. So wasn't that keen on the actual story. There was a myth that originally Roger Delgado was going to pop up in the story, but actually there was a completely different story that was written, which was going to feature the Master, but obviously because of his, sadly, his untimely death, they rearranged it and they put this story on. So the Master was never due to be in this story, but was going to be in the final Pertwee, the original final Pertwee story before he passed away. But Kismet Delgado does appear in this. So this is, as I said, they sort of went around and they asked Jon if there was anyone that he knew would want to be in this story. So she gets to play the Queen Spider in parts 4 to 6. This was being filmed at the same time as Robot. So there's quite a bit of sequences where Sarah was running from one side to the other because they were filming the 2 episodes at the same time. Jason's looking open-mouthed.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. They had Pertwee and Tom in the studio at the same time. A lot of Robot is location. I know there is some studio, but some of it's in location. So they were filming the 2 parts at the same time. There was an overlap. So there we go.
Don't say you don't learn anything here, viewer. That's what I say.
But do double check anything you hear here.
Well, you get a name check for Harry Sullivan, even though he's not in the episode.
Doesn't mean they were filming it.
No, it doesn't.
That's very shabby basis for that. That is.
No. They were filming at the same time, and you get the mention of Harry Sullivan because he's going to be in the next one. They say, "Shall we get Harry Sullivan?" He says, "No, it's fine." And then later,
but then a lot of the production team are the same on this as they are on Robots. They wouldn't have been filming concurrently. It wouldn't have had like Planet of the Spiders one side of the studio and Robot next door.
There was an overlap in the filming because they were going from one set to another.
Well, I've learned something new here today. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Mentioned about the beginning of part 6 was edited bits that they'd taken out of part 5, but had to put into part 6 because it was over running in part 5. That's pretty much it on that one.
I'm going to give a bit of a shout out here to John Cain, who played the part of Tommy. I think he really actually played the role superbly well throughout. And there's that really funny line where Sarah says, "Tommy, you're normal," after he's been zapped by the crystal. And it's just that funny answer that you get back from him, which I laughed, and it's so well done. But I think he's tremendous throughout this story.
He reminds me of the Tennant story where he becomes human and he gives the fob watch to the kid, and he starts to become more Time Lord. He's a bit like that, isn't he? He starts off as a simpleton, but as time progresses, he becomes more. He becomes more intelligent. He becomes more powerful. He's able to resist the spiders. So yeah, it's a good character. Whereas you have someone who like Lupton, who's a very strong character, but I find him incredibly irritating. In the battle between him and the spider, I'm really not sure who I want to win.
The big one.
The big one. That's the sequel, Jason. You should start writing now. After the great one was destroyed, the big one took over.
No, that's another Big Finish spin-off. I'm going to start writing it tonight.
It is a slightly thankless part, though, isn't it? Because he doesn't really get a great villain scene in it, does he? There's not a, he's just. I don't know. He gets the run around and the trip and he gets all that, but he doesn't get a scary scene. There isn't any part.
No.
They all look like they're sort of from a bridge club, don't they? They all have like the leather elbow pads or something. They don't convince as a sort of demonic spider cult, do they? They all look like they drink craft ale, Jason, and play bridge.
They've all nipped out of the Abigail's party studio that was next door, that was probably filming at the same time as this was filming.
I think Alison Steadman was actually going to be the 4th Doctor, but the dates didn't quite tally up.
She was one of the voices of the spiders.
Janine Dubitsky was actually the original Harry Sullivan. Anyway, don't take all these facts, folks. Don't take all the facts away.
I'm just
Especially
gonna,
if there's a stone involved.
yeah, I just might have to flash up dark web alert for some of these ones today. These have been out there like it's got. I mean, I'll tell you what, if that is true, I have learned something new today.
Anyway, I think, although we should briefly just say that obviously we said there's a sort of roll call, but it is quite sweet that you get little bits with Stuart Fell and Pat Gorman gets a line and things like that. It's a sort of nod to the end of the era, because I suppose much past Robot, the next serial into production, much past that, you don't get very much Unity stuff, do you? It is very much the full stop when Barry goes. You get Zygons, whatever, but this is the end of this.
Move away, don't you? But yeah.
So are we going to hit some scores up on Doctor Who and Planet of the Spiders? You two are going to have to do scores here, otherwise it will just be my score, and that's not how this works.
Well, okay, James, I don't mind going first here.
I don't mind adding 0.5 to yours. Go on.
Excellent. Okay, this is great. So it is the end of an era. We've had a bit of everything thrown at us here. Nice little bit of business thrown at us through this story, particularly the supercar chase and airplane and hovercraft chase sequence.
It was when they got in the space shuttle. I mean, God, talk about taking it to the extreme.
What can you say? But it is the last story of what's actually been quite a strong season. Yeah, I think we've said a few times we came off the back of watching season 20 to come in and watch season 11. And actually, on the whole, I think this season for Jon's Last has been a good one. There are some nice closing bits to wrap up at the end of his era here. I think Jon and Liz in particular were working really well with each other by the time we got to his last story. It's sort of the end of an era, as I've said. I blame it for my arachnophobia, and you know what? I don't think it altogether, even though we've had a good laugh and a joke at it, it's a little overlong at 6 episodes, but it's still quite a good way, I think, to end Jon's era on the show. So from my point of view, my score is going to be coming in at a very healthy 7.
A very healthy. So now again, we're getting different things now in the numbers. A solid 8 and a very healthy 7.
That's it. Yes.
I shall note it down.
Thank you.
So my score is 7.5. In all seriousness, despite its many faults, I do really enjoy watching this. This is the opposite to some of the stories we've reviewed recently, where the parts aren't necessarily all right or fit together, but the overall thing, I think it has so much of the Pertwee era instilled in it, especially that chase. The chase is just, Pertwee was the James Bond of the Doctors, if you like, trapped on Earth. What are we going to do with him? We'll just give him a fast car and get him to do lots of driving around. And I think you get those nice touches where you've got the hovercraft and everything. The rest of the story, it feels like it's been kind of cobbled together with a few different elements that have already been in the show. You've got the Blue Crystal, you've got Mike, and I do like the ending for Mike. I do think it's good that he's not ended up as a secondhand car salesman. He's actually he's gone out into the real world. He's sought help, from the things that have happened before. I've talked previously about the relationship between Jon and Liz, and I think Liz and Tom really, when you compare the two relationships, it totally, ups the ante. And so actually, the fact that they don't spend a great deal of time together in this story, isn't, Sarah's quite independent anyway. We've established that from other stories, and she's off investigating it. So despite its many flaws, my score is based on how I actually enjoy the episode. And so I did score it an 8.
Ooh, excellent. And of course, she got on really well with Tom, and she was off filming with him for most of the time. She was filming Planet of the Spiders by the sounds of it. So
I'm out of it. I found a doctor I get on with.
Oh God, this is the Quarks all over again.
Did they film Castrovalva at the same time? The one thing I was going to actually come back to me talking about Liz and her performance is it's that thing we had the discussion of slightly about when I was Tegan bashing of a very nice and good character being taken over by, and when Sarah's taken over by the spider, that's quite something. And she physically changes with it, and that's a very strong thing, and it's quite disconcerting, isn't it? Because the companion, a knight, your friend, and she's all of a sudden she's a spider. That said, here comes the hot stepper. I'm ready to score, and it's not looking good, folks. I think this is an absolute turd of a story. I genuinely think this is such a slog. I would take 2 episodes of this off and give them to the Monster of Peladon to expand. That is how bad I think this goes.
Ooh. Oh dear.
It's sort of, it feels like there's just wafts of premise everywhere. There's just a waft of spider premise, a waft of alien planet, a waft of the Choji, a waft of Tommy. There's just little bits of everything that sort of all float slightly codependently, but not quite ever touching or resolving together. And it's just sort of lackluster. I feel that Jon's pretty much left the show about 3 stories back. This doesn't feel like he's in the room for this. He's counting down, and he's annoyed with upper management. This isn't great for him. So I mean, it's the 3rd Doctor. So I scored Planet of the Spiders 3.
Oh, after Metabilis 3.
After Metabilis 3, not after the 3rd Doctor, like I just said.
3.
That's a tardy 3. That's what I'm going to call that.
I'm going to write that one down. I'm going to use that one at some point. A tardy 3.
Not a TARDIS 3. That'd be bigger on the inside. So it'd be like 30 or something, wouldn't it?
I just love now. All I think of is it's just a bunch of wafters.
There's too much wafter on screen. Far too much wafter on screen. So maybe I've just got some inner trauma that I don't like Regeneration stories. They just hurt me too much. I can't score them highly. When I give Kaiser Androzani 2 points, watch the internet set ablaze. I'd do it. So anyway, that means Doctor Who and season 11 finishes thus. In 5th place, Alpha Centauri will be sad. It's the Monster of Peladon. 4th place, we've just discussed it. It's Planet of the Spiders on 18 points.
Not a story I thought I'd see at 4th place, I have to be honest.
Well, you saw it when you were 13. It scared you with the spiders, so be thankful.
That's all. You could even cure me of arachnophobia possibly now.
Could it?
I don't know.
Well, you've just watched it. Did it cure you?
No, it didn't. No.
Oh.
It's a long night, isn't it?
No, it's just yes. Think of the retreat. I might go to a bloody retreat after this. 3rd place, the Time Warrior, 22 points. Our runner-up for the season is Invasion of the Dinosaurs on 24, which means our winner on 26 points is Death to the Daleks.
Wow. Good winner.
Ooh.
Good winner. Good story, that.
Don't forget your comments.
Oh, Alex, it's a hoot. And it's only 4 episodes. Remember, the optimum length for a Doctor Who is 2 13-minute episodes. When you start getting to 6-parters, it's just going to fry my mind. Even without Stone. So anyway, let us know what you think below. I have been Paul or P-Bal, and I would like to thank you for joining me.
A pleasure as always.
I was just waiting for that. And lovely to see you all as well.
Right. See you soon. All praise the great one.
The big one.
The special Juan, which is some Juan we don't know.